Hello, I'm JP, and it's time to play around with an Ask JP question. I'm excited about this question. It's about authentically communicating with people who are defended. So, what does the question say? First, Danny Whitty from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Thank you for the question, my friend. This certainly touches my heart. Danny writes in, I've been trying to practice this concept of authentic communication. You and me both, by the way. As I try and take this concept into other areas of my life, work in particular, I found that everything is very surface level in the conversation. It's kind of like, hey, how are you? Good, thanks. How are you? Very surface level. Danny goes on, it seems like very few people are willing to talk about things that might stir up emotion. Because of this, I feel as though I never genuinely get to know someone. So getting to the question, how can I break this surface level communication with someone? Do they have to possess a willingness as well? I love the question, Danny. What I'd first like to share with you is, absolutely, a person does have to possess a willingness before we can expect, that's kind of a dirty word, but before we can expect and appreciate them to be opening up at an emotional level beyond the surface. Otherwise, if we kind of approach someone and kind of psychologically try and tie them down and say, you tell me what's really going on inside of you, we're actually emotionally violating someone, much like we don't want to physically violate someone. So the word I love is inviting people to authentically communicate with us. So then the question might actually become, how do we put the invitation on the table to ask people, hey, do you actually want to talk with me, or do you just want to go through a little sort of a dance where we do a little expression of, yeah, hey, how are you? I'm good. And it doesn't really mean anything, but it's just an interpretive dance we do. So is that what you want, dear friend or dear coworker? And they say yes or no. So the question, how can we invite people? I found, Danny, a very simple insight that works well for me is when I ask someone how they're doing, inevitably the same response, good. We notice the influx of voice, the tightening of their vocal cords. What pitch is that? Good. Is that some kind of like bird? Well, you don't sound like a human being. We know that this person has a lot inside their shell, and it takes a lot of tension expressed here through the vocal cords, creating usually a higher pitch, in order to hide that from you, and probably hide that from themselves. So the insight that works well for me after they do the high-pitched bird, good, is I ask them, really, how are you doing? And at that point, to me, the invitation's on the table. I've let them know, hey, I'm really interested to know how you're doing. Not how your shell is doing, but how you, underneath your shell, is doing. I'm really interested. How are you doing, really? From there, I find if a person needs to be defended, then they'll say, yeah, I'm good. Why do you ask? And I'll do my best to accept them and realize they're not going to share their heart with me, at least not right now. And I'm also surprised at how many people say, well, I'm glad you asked. Here's how I'm doing. I'm having a tough day. Or, you know what? I've never been happier. It's just amazing. I want to make sure I stay invitational. Otherwise, I actually build up resentment and anger towards myself, as well as shame for feeling like I violated another person, for setting up a scenario where I obligate them into telling me how they're really doing in their deepest, darkest, and brightest parts. If they share with me what's under their shell out of obligation, at some level, I'm likely going to own a sense of shame, resentment, and anger towards myself that I violated them. Much like if you went up to a stranger on the street, punched him in the temple, took his wallet, you would have just physically violated them. And if you are a healthy person, pretty quickly you're going to start feeling remorse, guilt, anger, resentment, and shame towards yourself. And Danny, I think there is an innocent, young, I'd call it an innocent inner child inside all of our hearts that wants nothing more than to connect with other people. And honestly, a lot of times that inner child inside of us, they'll take it personally when someone just gives us their defended shell. I'm good, how are you doing? Because inside our heart says, oh, they're not giving me their heart. Does that mean I'm not good enough? I'm not worth them giving, I'm not worth it to them, for them to share their heart with me? So I'm guessing, Danny, inside there might be some level of that inner pain inside of you coming up from your inner child. And I would just ask you to pay attention to that. I know for me, whether it's me talking to my father, my mother, or close friends, or my girlfriend, and I get a shallow, defended shell of an answer, I notice, wow, I feel kind of like a void inside. What's that about? And then when I sit with it, I'm like, yeah, I actually feel insignificant when these loved ones or friends of mine give me their insignificance. And then when you and I do experience authentic communication, it tends to make us feel significant because the person we're talking to gives to us, they share with us a significant part of themselves. So part of communication is realizing we're all codependent. If you give me your insignificant part, well, I'm codependent. I might feel like I'm insignificant. It's my fault that you're not giving me your real heart. So with that said, Danny, there's a lot of other insights with authentic communication, but my purpose here is to do my best to give a clear, direct insight to consider. Simply asking people, how are you really doing? I'm curious what it's like inside of your heart right now. And actually, just one other crumb of food for thought on that, Danny, is becoming even more invitational. Can let people know, hey, I'm a safe person for you to share in the presence of. So it can kind of becoming extra invitational to express a sense of presence and safety towards the person. We can actually say to them, hey, would it be okay if I asked you what it's like in your heart right now? We're not even yet asking them, what's it like inside of your heart? But we're actually asking if we can ask. What will bring a lot of people's shells up is if we tell them, tell me, what's going on inside of your heart? But we soften it by asking, what's going on inside of your heart? Then we soften it even more if we ask if we can ask. Would it be okay with you if I asked, how are you really doing inside yourself today? A lot of people grew up being programmed to wear the hard shell, cross their arms in front of their heart, and the information we share with the outside world is simply an expression of the arms crossed in front of our heart. Because a lot of these folks who aren't willing to communicate authentically, I absolutely fall into that category at times. We grew up under the impression that nobody's interested in what's really going on in our heart. Nobody's actually going to be there and be present with me no matter what. If my heart's screaming and crying, I'm afraid people won't want to be there for me if I share that. So I learned to cross my arms in front of my heart. So asking an invitational question lets the person we're talking with know that, hey, I'm not the people from your past that you were afraid were going to abandon you if you shared your heart with them. Or you know what? Maybe it wasn't that you were afraid they were going to abandon you. Maybe they actually did. But the reason why I'm asking deeply is because I'm not them. I am me, and I'd like to look eye to eye with you, heart to heart with you, and connect if it's appropriate for you. And if it's not, I'll do my best to accept you as you are, dear friend of mine. Thank you so much, Danny. I hope this helps a little bit, and I look forward to hearing what your authentic communications evolve into with people in your life.